Actually, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Have you gotten to play around with any of Google's newest models yet at all? The new Gemini Flash or
No,
anything?
only in conversation. I think the thing I'm excited to hear, and this is maybe getting a little too techy for what we generally talk about, but the if anyone knows who's listening knows what RAG is, it was this big thing. It was a really, really big thing for a while about just like how you feed relevant information into a model. And it's this whole long-winded thing about like, oh, how do you know what part of a document is relevant? How do I know like which documents to then retrieve from? All that sort of stuff. And Google's newest model, Gemini Flash 2.0, it has kind of upended a lot of the RAG conversation because the typical person is not interacting with like that many documents at a given moment. Gemini can hold 2 million tokens. That's a really like abstract phrase, but like that's like probably a significant number of like encyclopedias worth of information dumped into that sort of space. And not only that, but it's just really, really good at getting information out of really long form context. So it kind of killed RAG, is what it's kind of sounding like is happening, where there's so many of these startups where their whole thing was like, oh, we're going to help you read from tables. Every like cloud provider, there's a number of startups that are helping you like extract information from long form documents. And the consensus that seems to be appearing is Gemini Flash 2.0 is like basically good enough, like 0.86 like average accuracy, or like 86% average accuracy with like a standard deviation of like 14 in either direction, compared to like what I think the primo startup doing this thing is, which is 90% accuracy with like 8 plus or minus. And you're getting a big company all of a sudden, like not big launch, not something that like really captures the imagination like a reasoning model does, but is like very, very, very practical for most use cases and really impactful in that way, and does a good job. Like of all the hype that we're kind of talking about that's present here, it's probably one of the most like subtle, simple things that will actually make a very significant dent in like what is the application space of AI and what model is actually making an effect really immediately.
Yeah, I read somewhere somebody said um, the following, which I think is a fairly kind of concise way of capturing the pitfalls of RAG, and that it doesn't RAG promises to return you the most relevant and important chunks. What it actually does is it presents to you the most semantically matched chunks,
Mm-hmm.
and that may or may not be of heightened relevance. And so it does feel like a more thorough solution is just massive context window, give me everything, and then go find the thing that I actually care about versus trying to parse it before you actually load it in. So it was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm seeing people really liking Flash. I haven't played with it myself, so I was curious to hear what your thoughts were.
Yeah, with the I mean, so my minor announcement. We're building a new product that's more oriented towards students and educators, and in there is a very critical piece, which is like you can upload your class materials and you can talk with them and interact with them, that sort of thing. And I spent a good while over the last weeks building like the RAG engine for this thing, where hey, I care that like there's really smart processing about how this document gets converted into minor chunks and that those are all semantically searchable. And now I'm just sitting here just like I'm storing the full document anyway. I know what all is relevant to one class, and the token cost is just going down. That I could probably just trust that like model caching, all this sort of stuff that's coming out to reduce price. I could have just ignored that feature, and all of a sudden, like the capacity to make this tool good at like developing a comprehensive report over the book you were supposed to read or whatever it may be is super, super easy. And a lot of startups, the vast majority of like smaller businesses in the space that aren't like hype startups are consultancies where all they're doing is like taking what a ChatGPT is. They're taking what an LM tool is and going and home brewing that for someone in some private space. And Gemini Flash presumably just gave them like close to one cheat code for part of that problem.
Excellent. Well, that's a great place to wrap. We'll have more information for everybody following the announcement and full release of some upcoming products in next week's episode of the Scholar AI Founders Pod. Thanks again for joining us for this week's episode. Quick reminder to catch us on all your favorite podcast locations and find us on our YouTube channel. See you all next week.
Not a little, not a little.